Welcome to the final edition of the Basement Tapes for this year. I'm Megan Walker.
And I'm Corinne Frost.
Our top stories for the day:
Video games, a new virtual reality.
And should parents be sleeping with their kids? But first, some breaking news from the St. Thomas campus. Greg Thompson and Keith Ashfield were on site to make a couple of announcements today. Let's go to Corinne Frost for the story.
Well, Megan, this morning at 10:30, members of the St. Thomas community gathered in Jamestown Hall for an announcement from Veterans Affairs Minister Greg Thompson. He announced that under the economic stimulus plan, the federal government is lending an extra $20 million to help students under the summer jobs program. This will create more jobs for youth and will also help out employers. Officials and St. Thomas community members then went up to McCain Hall for an announcement from MLA Keith Ashfield and St. Thomas President Michael Higgins. Together, they announced that the federal government is investing $750,000 to the university through ACOA.
This project would allow us to expose students in New England to the high-quality undergraduate education for which St. Thomas has a deserved and established reputation, and is especially significant given that we are on the cusp of our centenary. We, in fact, cannot wait to start, because it's a new beginning, it's an energy moment, it's a time for a reconstructed and expansive future.
This money will assist the university to develop and implement a growth strategy that will target students in the United States, particularly the New England region. So it was a big day on the STU campus.
Thanks, Corinne. And now to our other top stories for the day. It was hosted in the same room on the same topic, but a recent panel on Middle Eastern relations hosted by St. Thomas University had nowhere near the conflict as the recent lecture by Yossi Almer. Almer, brother of outgoing Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Almer, delivered a speech on campus March 23rd that quickly turned into a shouting match and saw several protesters escorted off the premises by police. 2 weeks later, on March 30th, a panel brought together 6 community members with differing opinions on the conflict and sought the best way to solve it. The forum provided a much more civil dialogue. Arnold Chippen, a member of the Jewish community and a local developer, was one of the speakers at the event, providing just one of several perspectives brought forward.
Israel will trade hundreds of prisoners for 1 or 2 dead bodies, like they did with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and for a live soldier like Gilad Shalit, kidnapped from Israeli soil in 2006, Hamas is demanding 1,000 prisoners. A simple fact that shows the value that Israelis place in the lives of their citizens.
After the event, time was allotted for questions from the audience. It was sparsely attended, but those present were active in the ensuing discussion. It was hosted by St. Thomas's Religious Studies Department.
For more on how campus is reacting to the Gaza issue, we go to TJ Milburn outside the Kinsella Auditorium. TJ?
Thanks, Corinne. As you mentioned, the debate went pretty smoothly a few nights ago, and it was a stark contrast to Kinsella Auditorium 2 weeks earlier, when Yossi Almer's lecture turned into a microcosm of the war zone in Gaza.
Mohammed Jabbar Hodij, 17 years old. Tahir Anwar Bamfushat, 17 years old.
Protesters and security came out in full force, turning the supposed lecture on Israeli politics hosted by the Political Science Student Society into this.
You're under arrest.
And this.
I am the microphone. Nobody said the word Jewish until you did.
This gentleman right here.
For his part, Almer, a controversial figure for many, didn't avoid the hot-button issue.
I'm going to talk about Gaza, don't worry. I'm going to talk about Gaza.
The poorly advertised lecture was well attended, but not everyone came to listen.
Criminals were not. You're the war criminal.
Get out. Get out.
But as you mentioned, 2 weeks later at the debate hosted by STU's Religious Studies Department, empty. Some familiar characters showed up, but the auditorium was absent hecklers and banners. And other than a few silent shakes of the head, or a disagreeing eyebrow, the debate was virtually comatose in contrast. I spoke with Alexandra Bain. She's a religious studies professor here at STU. She organized the forum. She said the debate was necessary in order to give both sides of the issue in Gaza. She said that Almer's lecture was very one-sided in its perspective and didn't give a fair and balanced view for those in attendance. Her event was very well publicized. There was almost a week and a half's worth of advertisements on the STU website as compared to Almer's lecture, which went up the Friday afternoon just before the Monday lecture. although it happened that her lecture was very, very poorly attended. There were less than half of the members who went to the Omer lecture that showed up at her panel discussion. Notably absent, pretty obviously absent, were members of Fredericton Peace Coalition and Strax. Both organizations showed up at Omer's lecture and were very loud, protesting, unveiling banners. Quite a few members of Strax were actually hauled out of the auditorium by security. Also absent from the debate was Richard Blackier. He's a high school teacher in Woodstock. He's also a very outspoken member of the Jewish community. He's a member of New Brunswick for Israel. He calls himself a militant Zionist. He went to the Omer lecture. He was quite vocal there. He asked quite a few questions. He was very upset with the groups like Strax and the Fredericton Peace Coalition. However, he wasn't invited to this panel discussion. He didn't receive any invitation, which he felt was a bit strange considering the organizers' understanding of how involved he is in the issue. I talked to some other professors here at STU who didn't want to be on camera, but they said the event is showing both events showed this new style of academic freedom. They said opposing groups are trying to outlaw each other or out-yell each other at their corresponding events. Some professors called it a dogma stampede. One retired STU professor called STU's academic freedoms, quote, a joke, and said that both events were a shame and a sham. Whether they were a shame and a sham is certainly for the decision of those who were in attendance, but these events are certainly raised quite a few hairs on campus. Back to you guys.
A 64-year-old woman accused of stealing money from the senior residents at a special care home where she worked is now on trial. Demira Devlatrova is following the case. So Demira, can you tell us what happened at the court?
Well, Megan, there are actually two women that are charged with stealing money from Ralph Morgan. They are Becky Wilson and Margaret Woodward. Both women worked as a home care workers where Ralph Morgan lived. And this incident happened between 2000 and 2005. At the court this Thursday, Ralph Morgan's son, David Morgan, testified that his father inherited $24,000 and that he sent him a money order from the United Kingdom. At that time, Margaret Woodward promised to deposit this money on Ralph Morgan's behalf. However, as a HSBC bank employee testified this Thursday at the court, Margaret Woodward opened a joint account on her name and on Ralph Morgan's name. So what happened afterwards? It was very simple. Both women, Wilson and Woodward, withdrew the money and spent on their purposes. But they presented fake memorandums and checks that all the money was spent on Ralph Morgan's needs.
But Demira, why did it take so long to find out that the money was missing?
By 2005, the whole amount on the account were cleared. Well, Megan, it is because of a strained relationship and a miscommunication between the father and the son. The father actually was surprised to get the phone call on his birthday from his son because he believed that his son is dead. So it is then when suspicions rose and they find out about the missing money. They reported to the police. Even though Ralph Morgan died in 2006, but he left videotaped statements to the police where he said that he never gave permission to Wilson or to Woodward to withdraw the money from his inheritance account.
So what will happen next, Demira?
Well, Megan, the trial will continue on May 26th, and the court will view the voir dire hearing and will determine if it will be admissible to the trial. Back to you, Megan.
Thanks, Demira. Coming up after the commercial break.
The recession has left thousands of Canadians without money and no job to pay the bills. But just how are Fredericton's charities staying afloat with the increased demand? I'm Jillian Watts, and I've got this story coming up next.